polling stations. My name is Dingindaba Jonah Puyoya.
My name is Andrew Mwansa. 11 presidential candidates want to become the next president of Zimbabwe. One of them is a woman who we're talking to just 2 days ago. She says that she's got aspirations to serve the people of the nations for the next president of Zimbabwe. My name is Andrew Mwansa.
We're going to talk to a number of people who will be joining us via video conferencing on this evening's edition of Zimbabwe Decides, and they're going to be giving us context to what's going on in Zimbabwe at the moment, and they'll be telling us about.
Obviously, today, earlier on, there was supposed to be a press briefing being held by the chairperson of the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission. The press briefing has been rescheduled to tomorrow. Obviously, a lot of issues that are coming out of the electoral process, a lot of litigations when it comes to the electoral.
Us to talk about women in politics, and this is because there's a huge drive to have women participate in politics across the Parliament in terms of the resources that are needed for somebody to participate in this election. But also, I believe one of the key ways that they
people in this electoral process will be speaking to a young person representing a civil society organization called Youth Decide Zimbabwe. His name is Lenmo Munkangu, and we'll be discussing issues around young people's participation. Give us details in regards to how the build-up has been from morning up until this time. You know, Jonah, quite a number of developments coming from Zimbabwe. Obviously, it's going to give us details regarding the. Very importantly, is getting to refresh our minds on some of the presidential candidates that want to take over the helm of leadership in Zimbabwe, but also be looking at some of the clips on what happened earlier on today when the two top contenders, Nelson Chamisa as well as Emma.
At this time, and this is the leaderboard that we're going to be building upon over the next couple of days until Zimbabwe decides on who should be the president of that country. Like Andrew said, there's 11 candidates, and these are the,
at the moment, new votes.
Douglas Monzora, Movement for Democratic Change, an interesting man that wanted to pull out of the race last minute and was told he can't do that. It would have been really costly on the side of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, and he has to give 21 days.
Of Zimbabwe went for elections. The MDC was the largest opposition political party. As we speak, Nelson Chamisa is, Nelson Chamisa's party, the Triple C, is the largest political party in Zimbabwe, and MDC becomes third most largest political party. But another
eventually saw Douglas Monzora emerging victorious as leader of the Movement for Democratic Change, ousting Nelson Chamisa, who went on to create his own political of the MDC and had no choice, second best in that election that he contested in Shanghai. But let's take a look at the other candidates and what they have.
When Robert Mugabe was, toppled out of power, when that coup happened, when Zimbabwe went for elections, indicated that Zimbabwe grew by 5.5% of their GDP in 2023. Now the economy is growing at about 3.2%, but also issues are continued. But we'll see how then his government, if he continues to be in power, how things will be turned.
Assembly having no vote to his name in this election. Trust Chikohora, Zimbabwe Coalition for Peace and Development, ZCPD, equally having no votes.
She comes from the corporate world, and she believes that she has that Nelson Chamisa is equally,
yes, he is a pastor and a lawyer. And in fact, it's interesting that you mentioned.
Final candidate in this race is Wilbert Mwao. Well, it's
been most of
them, 100% of the polling stations. I think it was as low as 85%. Now, unfortunately, of course, the successes of today have been over polling stations, so that if the polling does split, which are regarded as provinces, which are Harare and Bulawayo. Now, in Bulawayo, it was for local authorities. So the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission issued a petition, court sat about it wasn't happening as fast as they would like to do. I must say he didn't get into detail, and I wasn't given an opportunity to actually some of the observer missions. I heard Nevers Mumba from the SADC mission saying that they were assured that the ballot papers were ready, and they were surprised that they hadn't been delivered to polling stations. So the 12 hours starts. Whenever the first vote happens, that's when 12 hours starts. So if you start voting now, you have 12 hours from now to complete the voting process.
I've got a question for you. The sentiments that have been shared by some people online that are saying that they're using VPN, and this is in a bid for them to avoid being cut off.
Yesterday was that if you didn't wear a mask and you go to a polling station, you would not be allowed to vote. There were also posters being printed yesterday, some of the stories that are happening on there. No internet has been cut off to date. No, there's no stopping of anything. The government hasn't done anything.
Engage you, Lenmo. I know for a fact that you're in the waiting room and waiting to be engaged. Back to you, Andy. Let's talk about the voter turnout. How is the voter turnout looking like from morning up?
Compared to last election in 2018, there was just over 5 million voters. Papers yet. There's queues waiting. In fact, Zimbabwean citizens, some of them have been waiting at the polling station. Is the increase in women voters. I think that's an interesting number that we'll analyze when we start getting some of the results through, because some of the vote, because it appears here that the youth vote doesn't seem to be as critical, even though it is quite a large demographic.
Started at 7 a.m. Mashonaland West, about 95%, because of what you were talking about, the delayed delivery of these ballot papers for Harare.
It is a very small number. Harare Metropolitan has the largest block of voters in the country. Concern, of course, is reports or stories that this is being done deliberately. This is being done to stifle the opposition strongholds, which are the urban areas. But funnily enough, that isn't happening. It appears that citizens are willing to wait day here in Zimbabwe, and it's unfortunate. And really, it's all about logistics. It's about planning. It was at 11 o'clock this morning. It probably has improved from there, but not very much. There was still know when it's going to happen, and even worse, the actual agents at the polling stations don't really know. They can't really tell citizens when, and it's been quite a smooth process in other parts of the country.
Well, let's look at the next 5 provinces. Zimbabwe has got percent. Well, it seemed like Harare is the only one with a big problem.
Or rejected to stand, and they are the ones who actually then went and took the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to court so that they could get. Because you would think that if the court cases, imagine this didn't happen yesterday, it wasn't have been ruled upon by the courts. So it's interesting to really get to the bottom of it. I've been talking to various observer groups, and that's one of my questions to them. I said, can you tell it could be something different to me? But generally it's about trouble about it. And so there's barometers that you can look at to say what is a free and fair election. I think that is what now over the next two days, the next days or so we're going. So it doesn't matter what happens today. I mean, obviously people, they would announce exactly, they would say, and them in front of me, and they'll be putting them up on the screen. The off, those results are put outside the polling station on the wall. So it's very easy in a way to figure out who's won very quickly. And
all right, thank you so much, Andy Hodges, for talking to us and giving us that update in Zimbabwe. Also in Chamisa and Emerson Mnangagwa were voting election.
Ahead of these polls, only one is a woman, and she believes that she is the one that is going to lead Zimbabwe out of its economic challenge.
Learn more. Are you able to hear me?
About only 23% of the polling authority, the local authority, engaging in different issues, trying to make sure that we get into this election, the nation, So actually, I can say that young people of this country are ready. Witness today, I strongly believe that
is through participating in the electoral process itself. Are you happy with the turnout?
Our young people, 6 youths, those who are below the seeing many young people. So I think it's very important to acknowledge what the young people are doing, but also we can talk of the structural hostility and constitutional impediments which are there, which actually left as because the council requirements are quite flexible. So, difficult question, because you know what, young people are not a homogeneous 7% of the total population of the country forward in terms of the economy, to make sure that young people are leaders in the youth councils who go there. But I think from the manifestos that we have
on Zimbabwe decides earlier on, they had
Mr. Johnston, Bomba Town, no businessman. I said the automatic 45 party. So I'm an intermasan. I saw Patricia. I like your business number.
Security good to protect the data shed.
Can sometimes be difficult. So I ask a pediatric nurse for advice and expert skincare.
While everything is going up and up and up, Unify continue. You should try it.
Stay pressure-free and enjoy interest rates as low as 6%. Unify.
Your stories at Cadbury.Africa and make story time sweeter. Cadbury, there's a glass and a half in everyone.
We always found time to comfort each other after a long day. For us.
Hello, darling.
Hi, Granny.
What did you do this weekend?
Well,
oh.
On Saturday, my friends and I met up to hunt some dragons. Again? Yes! Also, I taught the vacuum cleaner and the TV this new dance everyone is doing.
Bruh, come on there. Size no matter. The biggest dragon for Westeros, now small picking face am, climb down, ride down like Formula 1. Here, catch me.
I didn't tell you.
Watch the series, movies, and sports you love.
Pot draw. Feel like a winner with 1xBet. Use promo code to get a bonus on your first deposit.
Welcome back. You're watching Zimbabwe Decides. It's now 15 minutes after voting closed in that. For this have been attributed to several reasons, and part of this is what is being called lack of planning on the side of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, and especially in Harare province, where only 23% of the polling their vote.
Over 6.6 million people voted to register to vote in the elections in Zimbabwe. 3/4 of these that registered to vote are women, and are quite important for the democratic dispensation of any country. That's the reason for why we're joined in this evening by Sakile Sifelani Ngoma, who is
percent of the voting population. So women in Zimbabwe are on the voters' roll. But I think if you look at the day's events, I think there's been some significant the ability to acquit their civic and political rights and go and vote like everybody else. We're worried about public safety that's going to come up as a result of the long queues and the implications on access to public transport. If you look at the two metropolitan provinces that have got very sort of poor numbers in terms of the
Sakile, would you say that the environment has been unsafe today because there's other stakeholders that feel that the election has largely been peaceful so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the election has been peaceful in the sense that, we haven't had areas and that could have served as potential intimidation to voters.
Well, let's talk about some a hindrance to the growth of democracy in Zimbabwe.
Well, I mean, I think I'm going to sort of, say the day is not yet out. Definitely the biggest concern that the Electoral Commission has already acknowledged has been the delays around some of the shortcomings in our legal framework, and also some of the low numbers of women's participation, in particular, the inability of political parties to, respect the constitution at 50-50 percentages and to be
clear, and it always presents for some very weird scenario that majority of the people that are registered to vote are women, but much fewer of them are actually contesting in these elections. And
we just don't have adequate political will. The political parties in this country have signed a gender equality pledge, committing themselves to delivering on constitutional standards around gender balance, which is set at 50-50. But if you look at the electoral reform agenda, you will notice that the electoral amendments we need to deliver in local government, where we've got 1,970 direct election seats. In other words, the councillors in the wards, we don't have half of one. Yes, we meet it through the proportional representation, but in the direct election seats, we're regressing. We're not going forward.
Sakile Sifelani Ngoma, thank you so much for talking to us. because only until the last person in queue votes is when a polling station is going to close, and voting garner above 50% of the total votes cast.
Well, 50% of the total vote cast. 2018, we had 23 total number of presidential candidates. This time around, only the people of Zimbabwe can tell.
And we will give you all these updates here on Zimbabwe Decides. My name is Dingindawa Jonah Buyoya.
My name is Andrew Mansa. Remember that Diamond TV is your #1 election data plug.